So that you're all aware, we are recording, and I'd like to welcome you all here today to our third Looking Forward webinar, which is designed to help our communities in Southern Vermont look forward to life post-pandemic. And today's webinar is going to focus on an alternative approach to traditional wastewater management and how it can be used to help protect our water resources as well as using the resource productively. My name is Susan Westa. If there's anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the Community Development Lead and Brownfields Program Manager here at the Windham Regional Commission. We have our Executive Director, Chris Campany, on as well. He just gave you a little wave. And just a couple of quick Zoom tips. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself so that we can help keep down the background noise. If you have questions, feel free to put them at the chat box at any time. I'm going to monitor that, but also we have a small group, so probably if you raise your hand, we'll likely see you and be able to call on you. That should not be a problem. And before we get into the presentations, I'm going to do quick introductions of our guests. Today we have Ivan Ussach, who is the Executive Director of the Rich Earth Institute. Ivan lives in rural Franklin County, a short distance from Brattleboro, and he brings a wealth of environmental and nonprofit management experience to the Rich Earth Institute. He has a background in environmental toxicology and has co-led several nonprofit organizations, including the Millers River Watershed Council, and he has a master's in environmental science from Columbia University. We also have Kim Nace, who is the CEO of the Rich Earth Institute, LLC. She has a master's in international administration from World Learning and a master's in educational leadership from Keene State. She was in the Peace Corps in Botswana and has experience coordinating research and with the MacArthur Foundation, as well as serving as an elementary school principal. And Kim is a co-founder of the Rich Earth Institute. She has focused on engaging others in the possibilities and practicalities of urine recycling, and Kim and her family use a urine diverting composting toilet themselves. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Ivan.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and Ivan is going to start the presentation.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see the screen. So looks like it's loading on my end. There we go.
Looks great.
So here we are. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I wanted to start off by thanking the WRC for this opportunity to have Rich Earth share its work and our vision for a healthy and sustainable future for our communities. I do have some notes here that I'm going to be referring to, so if it seems like I'm reading notes, it's because I'm referring to some notes. Sue already gave you some introductions, so I don't think I really need to say more in that regard. So our focus today is on urine diversion as a solution to pollution, and we are ready for the next slide.
Oops, sorry, there it is.
So this is a rather dramatic slide, and hopefully you can see from this how urine diversion is highly desirable for several reasons. The first is to save fresh drinking water, which, as many of you probably know, is becoming something of an endangered resource on our planet for a variety of reasons. 1 trillion gallons a year in the United States used to flush toilets. So here you can see on the graphic the relative amount of actual urine relative to the water used to flush it. And the urine, as we'll look at and see in a few minutes, has nutrients in it that are very valuable, but when they get flushed down the toilet and end up going into receiving water bodies, they cause a host of environmental problems. So a productive resource becomes a waste, and we're trying to prevent that from happening. Lastly, as Sue alluded to, the urine that's captured from the waste stream can be used and is being used by us to produce a productive end product, namely fertilizer. And it's in this sense that Rich Earth talks about closing the nutrient cycle. What we'll be discussing today, briefly, a little background on wastewater and nutrient pollution and how it affects your communities. What Rich Earth is doing in a variety of areas to address these issues, and opportunities going forward that we can all be involved in. So, next slide, please. Here's another way of saying the same thing in very basic terms. Basically, in conventional sanitation, we're flushing a tiny amount of pee down the drain using very large amounts of water. Next slide. But it's the urine that contains the vast majority of both the nutrients and much of the pharmaceuticals and other micropollutants that go on to pollute local water bodies. So you can see in this slide here, the first slide is kind of a duplicate of the previous slide, showing how a wastewater is almost, entirely water, and yet the nitrogen content is found mainly in the yellow part, which is the urine, as well as more than half of the phosphorus and roughly half of the micropollutants. Next slide. So when it comes to moving this waste, we have sewage treatment plants. We also have septic tanks, and in Vermont, where our work has been focused since starting a dozen years ago, we have both. So the waste that's flushed goes either to the septic system or through the sewers to a treatment plant. And the wastewater treatment plants remove a lot of important things like pathogens, organic matter, and occasionally pharmaceuticals. But much of the nutrients are not filtered out by the treatment process and are sent straight into local receiving water bodies. This is an issue that will get worse with climate change because of extreme weather events, basically overwhelming the ability of conventional sewage treatment plants to process sewage. Brattleboro, as an example, has a waste treatment plant that has an average flow of about 1.3 million gallons per day, and measurements from 2019 show a daily average of just under 300 pounds of nitrogen discharged daily into the Connecticut River, which amounts to about 108,000 pounds of nitrogen going into the Connecticut over the course of a year. And of course, all of that water ends up flushing into Long Island Sound as the main receiving body. Next slide, please. So here's a little graphic for the septic systems. And as some of you probably know, Vermont has the highest proportion of septic tanks among homeowners in the country. And some interesting work that's recently been brought to light by Vermont DEC shows that pollution from septic systems is much greater than previously thought. And they will be generating some reports on that we're very eagerly looking forward to reviewing. So let's have the next slide. The extra nitrogen results, as we've said, in excess nutrients in local rivers, lakes, and oceans. So instead of doing something productive like fertilizing farms, the nutrients are causing harmful algal blooms. And in the case of our watershed, which is the Long Island Sound watershed, the Connecticut River watershed, these harmful algal blooms not only deoxygenate water and cause mass fish die-offs, as you see here, They also can produce neurotoxins and other chemicals that are dangerous to human health. You can see this is an image from Long Island in 2015. And you'll see a reference here to coming soon, TMDLs, which are total maximum daily loads for variety of substances in a variety of receiving water bodies. We're focusing here on nitrogen and in Long Island Sound and the Connecticut River as receiving bodies. This has been something that has been underway at the federal and state level for many years, but because of the complexity of determining proper limits, it's been something of a slow process. Nonetheless, state environmental officials and federal officials at the EPA have been moving forward. And eventually every wastewater treatment plant in Vermont, as well as all along the Connecticut River in the 5 states that drain into the Connecticut River, all of those plants will have eventually a numerical limit as to how much nitrogen can be released to that receiving water body. So we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. We know that it is in motion. So that's why the question mark as to coming soon, we know it's coming, depending on how you interpret soon, you know, in geological time of, you know, millions of years, it will definitely be soon, but we can't quite say exactly when that will be. And we are looking to get up-to-date information on that. I think this is a good spot for me to turn it over to Kim to kind of give you a tour of some of the highlights of all the work Rich Earth has been doing these past dozen years. Kim was there from the beginning and has been there, so she's the best person to do that. So go ahead and take it away, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can get it to switch. Okay, so you know, 2011, Abe Noe Hayes and I got together and shared a vision for alternatives to our current conventional practice that we do with our wastewater. And we've created this institute, a research institute with a mission to live in a world with abundant water, clean water, and fertile soil, achieved in part by reclaiming the nutrients from our bodies in a life-sustaining cycle. And to do that, we engage in research, education, and technological innovation to advance the use of human waste as a resource. I'm really excited today to tell you about a lot of the technologies we have our hands in at this point in time. We are really busy and accomplishing quite a bit that's probably mostly not known outside of our research center, particularly because of the pandemic and not just having people show up and find out what we're doing. So here we go. This is Abe and I in 2012. We started with a proof of concept, found 60 people to help us out, and spread 600 gallons of urine at the Fairwinds farm with Jay Bailey and his horse-drawn applicator. And now here we are, almost 9 years later. Annually, we're putting 10,000 gallons of urine on 4 different farms. We also have, this summer, we've got 5 new farms that are experimenting with various crops to use our pasteurized urine fertilizer on. And we're very proud that it continues to grow. We have many more people who want the urine than we have available. So the more urine we can collect, the more we'll be closing the nutrient cycle. So it is the first and still kind of the only community urine recycling program in the country. It's the first of its kind. People are excited about it. It's, you know, we've gotten a lot of notoriety in the media nationally, and we've held a conference since 2015 that originally started in my living room, but now it's actually virtual, online, and international. We had over 200 people from around the world, 6 continents last fall. It was a very impressive 3-day event, and we're really looking at the very high level of all the research efforts, lab scale efforts, and also various projects all around the world that are engaged in urine nutrient recovery. So this is what we do in Brattleboro, this community scale project. We have collection, transport, treatment, and application. And I'll kind of walk you through these different parts. Let me see, I think I'm gonna go there. Yeah, so for collection, we have this informal system that we use to get ourselves going as a project with these 5-gallon containers and a funnel. People have them in their homes, and then they use their cars and drive them to our depot. And here's the picture of the depot. They have this self-service pump where you just put the pump in, and it brings the urine back into, we have 6 250-gallon tanks behind this wall. And when that's full, we get messages. This is all remotely monitored on phones and computers, and we get a message and we go down and pump it and take it to our research center. The other way that people, I want to also mention here is that we've received funding this year through the Long Island Sound Futures Fund to open a new depot in Rockingham up in the Bellows Falls area. And we're very excited about that. We have a kind of a good community group of people who are ready to get started. It's too far to drive the urine down to this depot. It's really great that they're going to have their own. Then, let me see if I'm, so another way to collect urine besides this very informal method with these 5-gallon containers is to use a new urine diverting flush toilet. These 2 varieties that you see on the screen here are from Europe. And the Rich Earth has installed each of these at separate times at our research center and experimented with them, piloted them, really learned a lot about user acceptance of these 2 toilets. The one on the right shows you the divided bowl where you sit down normally and the urine goes into the front and goes through that little trap area, and in the back goes the toilet paper and everything else, and flush water and poop. And so that's a toilet that we like. But the one in the middle, the Laufin Save toilet, we are very proud that we have had the chance to pilot the first one in the country, and it's still installed at our center. It has a little bit of a different technique to collect the urine so that when you sit down, you can't really see a divided bowl, and it doesn't look a whole lot different than a regular flush toilet, but it uses a teapot effect, and it's just physics and designed so that that urine can be trapped and collected separately. We've been using this a long time, and we have a new project in town that's going to be a public installation. I'm not going to tell you where because that will happen. We'll do the big reveal when it's installed, but they have ordered another one of these. So we will have 2 of these in Vermont, and there aren't too many in the country at all. I think they're probably the only 2 in the country to try out. So that's another way to collect. This is the more formal long-term idea of how we can collect urine in our community. So what we've done also with funding from the Long Island Sound is we've done a village sanitation project, and we did that with Chris and the Windham Regional Commission in a couple years ago. And where we are in that process through this program and with funding from the Long Island Sound, we've been working on individual home and small businesses or like public buildings such as the Westminster West Library. That toilet is almost finished being installed there. And we've been working with the state for pioneering regulation. Let me just backpedal a minute that regulation has been a big piece of the work we do at the Rich Earth Institute because there's really no pathway for this very innovative and alternative approach to wastewater management. So in the early days, working with Deb Markowitz, who was then the Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources, we began the process of creating the permit used to pasteurize the urine in order to apply it legally to our fields. And that was the important step that we were working with. We use just a regular septic hauling license, just like any other septic hauling company, to transport our urine. And then this is the new pathway that we've developed in the last about year and a half with the state that people can use to permit urine collection in their homes. And this is just a schematic that shows you the kind of drawings and things we've submitted and worked with the with our regulators in Montpelier. So in order to do an installation, we first start with what's called a site visit. And this is just the first page of a typical site visit report. Connor Lally from Nutrient Networks comes to any site. We've done about 30 of these in the area, and prepares a report saying showing like what are the options as a retrofit into this particular building that could be used. So that's the first step of the process. And then he outlines all the different technologies on the market and then a person or an organization can choose which method they would like to do or install in their particular bathrooms. Here's the cover page of the Village Sanitation Pilot Study. Very proud of this effort. We did this with Windham Regional, and we worked with Westminster West and West Dummerston communities. And really to get people to talk about this issue, you kind of have to bring them together in a group. And this is something that's very unusual. Like, you can get people to come together to talk about maybe their fire department or maybe, Chris knows this better than I do, but many different issues. But to get together and talk about toilets, it took a bit of lifting, and it's a pretty unusual thing to get people to do. But we learned a lot. We have a lot of issues in our villages with sanitation. I think people on this call might know about that, but it is this particularly challenged. There's no way to do a centralized sewage treatment process in a village with 60 households. That's totally impractical. And septic systems are aging. They're very expensive to replace. Many people don't have the funding to replace that. And they really weren't designed to recover nutrients. Septic systems were designed simply to manage the pathogens in human waste and then disseminate all the liquid, and the nutrients, they just don't, they are not captured. So if we can use urine diversion, there's a real possibility that we can capture the majority of nitrogen and a great percentage of the phosphorus in these systems and prevent them from, polluting the surface waters. So here's our applicator. We have 2 of them now. This is the larger one, the 500-gallon one. This is Dean Hamilton's farm up in West Brattleboro. And you can see that, 1,000 gallons of urine will fertilize 1 acre of hay. You can actually apply twice during a season, in the spring and then again after the first cut. And the farmers we've worked with have really appreciated. Sometimes they get 3 cuts in a year because we've added this extra fertilizer. We do have one farm that is replacing the synthetic fertilizer they would have used with our urine, which really makes us feel good about replacing the synthetic fertilizer. Permitting, as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing that regularly since 2012. I'll let you take a moment to sort of scan some of these milestones that we had at the Rich Earth Institute. I'll point out 2018 when we got our beautiful truck that you can see going through town. It has a license plate that says P4 Farms on the back, and it's our big yellow truck. So Arthur Davis drives that and picks up twice a year from people's homes, and the depot several times a year. And this gives you some ideas about how we've been moving with permitting. And this leads me into a more national effort that we have happening. We paired up with Nutrient Networks, Rich Earth Institute, Nutrient Networks, and Recode in Oregon, which is a permitting organization that does a lot with all kinds of wastewater and water quality regulations. And we've created the Golden Ribbon Commission. And because our summit has been so successful and we've pulled people together from that, we have over 80 people who are real experts in this field from all over the country, professors and regulators and industry people. And they're coming together to create and formulate pathways forward around the country so that urine diversion will be something that that can take off, and that the permitting doesn't have to stop it in its tracks. That's one of the biggest barriers in innovation in wastewater. And so we are very proud that this organization is doing very well, moving forward with the regulations. Let's see what else I have here. So this is what I think of as the future, part of the future, just a typical home pump out. Normally you get your oil delivered, they come and they put the hose in and they put the oil in your tank or gas, whatever you're using. And this is the reverse. You have your tank at the house and we can come in and just bungee it, put the cord right, put the pump and the hose right next to your house. You don't even have to be home, and we can take it back to our truck. This is where I want to tell you a little bit more about some of our new news, like the big news that we have. This is a freeze concentrate that we've been working on for about 4 years or so with funding from the National Science Foundation. The technology is so promising that Rich Earth developed a for-profit branch in 2019, the end of the year, and applied for a Small Business Innovative Research Grant, an SBIR, from the National Science Foundation, which we were awarded. So we've been awarded phase 1, and we're currently preparing our application for a phase 2 grant, which would give us 2 years of very solid funding to take our technology to market. It's what's important about concentrating urine is, in order to move it from where it's produced and get it to farms, you need to take more of the water out of it. So by concentrating it, you reduce the cost of storage and transport. So that's the reason that that's happening. It's very exciting. We have a lot of people involved, lots of interns, Eco-America volunteers, and several staff members and people working remotely from other parts of the country to help us develop this technology. Not sure if there was anything else I wanted to say about that. Yeah, so here's the building scale system. There's the acidification. There's a part where we treat, this is all what we call a treatment train. So if you take the urine, you want to take it through a specific treatment train, and we acidify it, which stabilizes it. Then we do this freeze concentrate, which we have several patents on. And then we can pasteurize it, and we have new pasteurizers, new iterations of our pasteurizer in various sizes. We currently have quite a few people who are asking to buy this pasteurizer, so we're sort of ramping up the development of some that we can get to market soon. And then we do the concentration, and in order to remove trace pharmaceuticals and things like that, we can use a charcoal filtration system. We've spent 6 years working with the EPA and National Science Foundation and our colleagues at the University of Michigan to really do some very specified research on the fate of pharmaceuticals, what happens to the pharmaceutical residuals in the urine when we use it to grow crops. And those papers will be coming out by the end of this year. There's a lot of papers that we've written and that are being processed right now. So it's been a big effort, and yeah, I'm not going to say any more about that. The papers will be out soon. Let's see. I think Ivan, you'll remember to touch on anything that I forgot, right?
Yeah, and when you get a second, Kim, Brian has a question in the chat that I think you might be able to respond to. Thank you for that wonderful overview of some of the main accomplishments of Rich Earth over the years and more recently.
Do you want to tell me that question now before we go farther? Because I can't see the chat.
Oh, what sort of concentration ratios are you getting for the concentrate?
It depends on if it's mixed with flush water or if it's not. But if it's just raw urine, we're concentrating by a factor of about 10. So that's pretty good. And some, I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, can I just jump back into that?
Sure.
Because is that the Rich Earth Institute is also was given a grant from the National Science Foundation to interview innovators and industry leaders and regulators across the country and around the world in the landscape of this emerging field. So 3 of us spent about 3 months, high intensity last fall, interviewing over 150 people in this landscape. And so we are pretty much on top of, like, what are the innovations, what level of technological maturity these are at, and what's happening next. And in this process, we found in the Netherlands, there's a new company working with black water separation at the large building scale. So imagine a building in New York City that separates gray water and black water. And this is called the Nace company. And they've got a great new sort of system that is an on-site system. And we are introducing our ideas to them to recover the nutrients, not just remove them. That's the big piece, is not just remove the nutrients, but recover them for beneficial reuse in agriculture. Yay, I know, I get very excited about it. So we in fact, this very week that we're in, we're using a sample that they sent us from their part of their treatment train. We have a sample they sent us from Europe that we're running through our freeze concentrate to see if we can get the kind of results that will bring together a partnership that, and they're already in 6 different countries with 1 installation and like 5 more designed for very, very big scale, for larger scale. So I just wanted to mention that, yeah, we're very excited about some of the developments that are happening. So,
Yeah. And just as a very quick follow-up to that, we have been successful in bringing a number of young professionals into the area. So we're hoping that, as an employer, we'll be growing over time as well. This slide, in some ways, is kind of the big picture. Imagine urine being collected, diverted, and put to productive use, on a large scale. That's really the vision. I mentioned earlier that figure of using 1 trillion gallons of precious drinking water to flush toilets. So that's the situation that we're dealing with, as well as keeping those nutrients from becoming pollutants in waterways. So we have a vision. We are hopeful that the infrastructure of the future will include fixtures to divert urine, protect our waterways, and create an abundant source of fertilizer. We're also very focused locally in where we are in southern Vermont, with an eye towards the rest of the state and beyond. In our region, we are looking at opportunities for larger facilities, public facilities that can collect urine and do nutrient recovery installations. And we're particularly excited. We're just now beginning to follow up and reach out with the Brattleboro Museum and the I-91 Welcome Center, both of which we think present tremendous opportunities for very productive and positive results. So hopefully we'll have more to share about that as time goes by. Just as an example, the Welcome Center, we have data that shows that this one building alone contributes 1% of all of the nitrogen that's loaded to the Brattleboro wastewater treatment plant. So just with some urine diverting toilets and other fixtures, we can make an immediate dent, just at the level of a single building. So we find that very exciting potential. Let's have the next slide, please.
Hold on. There. Did I get it?
Yeah.
There, that one.
Also, we wanted to keep the focus to some degree in this presentation on smaller towns and village centers in our region, and thinking about moving forward and things that we can do collectively. One useful area where people can help is with legislative reform. These two bills were initiated by Vermont citizens. They got a little bit of traction in the legislative session that has just ended and will be introduced in the next session. And they would go a long way towards creating a more receptive environment for innovative approaches to wastewater management, H382 and H70. They may end up with different numbers in the next session. So we're encouraging people to, to help to create that environment to make this type of innovative work more of a reality. Well, next slide, please. We just got a few more slides here, and then we'll be happy to hear from people directly. But another way that people can help to support these innovative approaches is to advocate at the state and local level for using some portion of federal funds, in this case, mainly the ARPA funds that are going to be flowing to our region and the rest of the country to fund this type of work. One point that we really like to stress is that the kinds of research and innovative work that we're doing does require funding. And we think that these innovations are part of that conversation. And we're hoping that people who see the potential in the work we're doing will help to get the word out that we deserve to, we, Rich Earth, and others doing this kind of work deserve a seat at the table to be part of that conversation of how at least some portion of those funds get spent. Yeah, next slide. The other thing that we're also very interested in supporting, kind of as a way of wrapping up, but also very directly to the work that many of you are doing in our region, is our interest in supporting village planning goals through sustainable sanitation. And we do have some experience in this area from the work with the village sanitation pilot study that Kim mentioned earlier, which was done in collaboration with Windham Regional Commission. So we're eager to collaborate with communities to meet community needs for sanitation using a variety of different sustainable options. So we want to end with encouraging people to get in touch with us. We'd love to talk with people. You've got our email there at info@richearthinstitute.org. We also invite people to visit us at our research center in Brattleboro at 355 Old Ferry Road, which is at the very northern end of Brattleboro off of Route 5. We've got our social media contacts there. So in closing, we would like to thank you all very much for your attention. We'd like to once again thank WRC for this opportunity to share our work and our vision. And we are happy to entertain questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivan and Kim. Are there any questions?
Shall I stop my screen share for a minute here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would help them.
I can see people, see who's here.
Yeah. Oh, Claire's just giving you some applause, I believe.
Oh. Thank you.
And I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Oh, Kevin, do you have something?
Yeah, just it crossed my mind thinking about like astronauts, and I feel like they pull the nutrients out so they can keep that water drinkable on board, and I'm not sure how true that is, but I don't know if you share technology or brainstorm with them and figure out how to concentrate the urine or the nutrients in that way.
We've had some we have had some conversations with the people who designed the wastewater system at the space station. It was a few years ago. We met with them, and they were interested in what our work is, and we learned a lot from them as well. We haven't worked with federal funding from NASA in any way, but we do know a little bit about their we know quite a bit about their technology. It is true. I mean, one of the EPA officials we talked to about 8 or 9 years ago said, if they can do it in space, why don't we do it here on Earth? So it is one of those truisms that technology that's been implemented up there could be useful here. We learned some real interesting things, but all of their water comes together, their urine and all their water systems, and then they clean it and reuse it.
Yeah, perhaps briefly, just as a follow-up on a sort of related note, we are constantly being contacted by individuals and groups doing related work around the world, and it's really interesting to see the breadth and diversity of these kinds of efforts. So when you think of people who work on large ships at sea, either industrial factory type ships or even cruise lines, you're reminded that there are many different places where this type of technology is being worked on. And, there's a lot of mutual interest among all of these players in what everyone else is doing to try to, improve the state of the technology. So just to kind of give it a slightly broader context there in regard to, what Kevin brought up about outer space.
Mm-hmm.
For those folks doing that on the ships and things, has there been any efforts to try and do like a hydroponic situation using the nutrients?
Our most recent conversation was with some folks in Chile who that's where a lot of salmon is grown, salmon farming out in the bottom of Chile. And, they have a crew of 25 that goes out to these spots, and they they don't come back in for months. And so they need to find, and they are not allowed to dump human waste in the ocean. I mean, that is becoming, as those laws become more and more stringent around the world, then you have these large ships that have needs, you know, for figuring out how to manage their wastewater much better. So yeah, we've had some very interesting conversations. They say, this is a problem, this is a problem. So I hear a whole lot about the problems. And there's really that, you know, this is the moment to innovate and to jump forward, because we don't have a lot of time to wait around. That, you know, it's a world with one water. That's the whole concept of all the water is connected. And so, you know, you can't just fix it in your yard. It's got to kind of happen everywhere, because it all flows somewhere. So, yeah, there's vacuum flush toilets. So we are very interested in composting toilets. We're interested in vacuum flush toilets, which are what you find on airplanes. So those are used on planes and trains. And if you were to think about buses and at a bus station, you know, how do they empty these tanks? I mean, there's just many places where human waste is collected, and then what's done with it. You know, one of the things about in Vermont, we have a lot of wastewater centralized treatment plants, and we also have septic systems that get pumped out. And those pump outs of the septic systems are supposed to go to wastewater treatment plants. But our treatment plants are sort of at capacity. You talk to our regulators, they are at capacity. Yeah, Chris knows, you know, it's really a serious problem. They're allowing, you know, there are permits going out now to apply sewage on, or, you know, septage onto farmland. Because they can't dump it at sewage treatment plants. There's just not enough capacity. So this is also a really big issue in San Francisco, and many other places. So a lot of creativity. This is a time we need a lot of engineering and creativity moved into this sector, and it's an emerging field. Urine diversion is a big piece of it, but it's one of many aspects of you know, revolutionizing our sanitation systems.
Chris also made a really important point in the chat that I responded to briefly in regard to the greenhouse gas emissions possibilities of our work with wastewater. And I responded briefly that, you know, I'm relatively new, but Rich Earth Institute has done some serious work on understanding the potential for those greenhouse gas reductions, and Chris suggested that we connect with Vermont Climate Council, which is maybe something that Kim already knows about, and you know, a possible presentation to some subcommittees. I presume that's at the legislative level, but yes, we've been thinking that it's time for us to kind of get back to the legislature and give them some updates on our work. So I think that very much ties in with what Chris is referring to, but he also had a link there for the Climate Council.
Those are subcommittees of the Climate Council.
Oh, of the Climate Council. Okay.
Yeah, it has been a few years since we've gone up to Montpelier for any reason to work with legislators, and this one looks like a really good place for us to jump on board and get our name in there as well.
Where is the?
I'm a member of the council, and we're actually charged with developing the climate action plan for the state.
Great.
It actually has to be implemented by the state.
Does the Climate Council have a physical home, Chris?
No, we're scattered all over the state.
Okay, but you're a good point of contact for us on that then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Would love to follow up on that. I'll check out the link when I can get more into it. Thank you for that.
And Julia just put into the chat. Julia here is with us right now. She's not visible, but she's works at the Rich Earth Institute, and she's put in the chat a life cycle assessment about urine diversion and conversion to fertilizer products at the city scale, and the impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So there has been some good modeling and some good analysis of how urine diversion would impact greenhouse gas emissions. One of the big reasons is because fertilizer production is a very high, releases a lot of greenhouse gases. So to replace fertilizer production with urine-derived fertilizer product would be one piece of that life cycle assessment. Yeah, that's a good one. I just want to say that I'm really grateful to have an audience and for people listening, and just that the work is moving along so well in Vermont here. We're very proud of the reputation we have and the kind of collaborations that are many and varied across the country and locally. And Rich Earth is now we have 2 branches. It got too big. It got too big. So we needed to grow and have a for-profit branch that's going to be selling products pretty soon. So, Brian, you have a question?
You should unmute, Brian. There you go.
Yes, it's basically it's a frequently asked but never decisively answered question about pharmaceuticals. Would it ever get to a stage where you would have to say to people, sorry, it's just that's, I mean, we just cannot accept your urine because of the pharmaceuticals that you're on? I'm thinking hypothetically, chemotherapy medication. If you've got an older demographic that's on chemotherapy medication, and this is not hypothetical, I did actually get a urinary infection which was treated with nitrofurantone, which is great stock is made of the fact it passes through your kidneys and basically into your plumbing. It's unchanged, where it basically attacks the bacteria. Next question, what will that be doing to the soil life, to the compost bugs? Will it ever get to the stage where you would have to say, sorry, we can't accept your urine at the moment until you're feeling better? We're going to get decisive answers. That's the thing.
I understand the question. It's a very, very good question. And, we studied a huge number of chemicals that, a broad spectrum of chemicals that are found in urine. We went to the toughest ones, and we also spiked our samples with the 10 times concentrate of what we find in a public sample. We took large public samples of urine, combined urine, and analyzed everything that was in there. And then we did apply it to carrots and lettuce in a very controlled study. We took samples of the tissue, the plant tissue, of the groundwater and the soils. And I guess I'm going to just use the standard thing that we've been saying for a while. We're trying to find good ways to express this to the public, but we found for caffeine, which there's a lot of in urine, that's the chemical that you find the most of in urine, you would have to eat a pound of lettuce grown with this urine fertilizer product for over 1,000 years to get a cup of coffee, a pound of lettuce every day. So it's extremely, we have developed the capacity to measure things at an extremely small, concentration level. But what we are looking at is, what does it mean to have a risk assessment, and then risk, what's it called when you comparative risk? Like, what is a worse risk? Because Brian, right now, all those drugs go into the river. So right now, they all go downstream and they are released into the environment through the waterways, through the urine. So what we're trying to do is capture them. And, our initial thinking is that the soil microbes do break down some of these chemicals, but there's much more research needed on, actual, the soil microbial health. That's a huge field, and many people have that same question. And just one more thing on that note, what was I going to say? The chemotherapy and some of these other really, really, really harsh chemicals, I do believe that it would, it could be a time when people say this shouldn't go down into our collection tank, but we don't know that right now.
I'd just like to add very briefly to Brian's question. I think Kim did a good job of responding, but we have been looking at this very closely for a long time. And, what does it mean to say something is present in negligible levels? I think Kim talks about how we talk about risk assessment and comparative risks. We know the levels are exceedingly low, nanogram concentrations and less. Now, there's always going to be someone who's going to say, well, that concerns me because it's not zero. And that's a very reasonable position to take. But it's become apparent to us when we talk about risk that, there is really nothing in life that has a zero risk. I mean, literally nothing. So when you think comparatively, when you talk about negligible and near zero, we feel very good about those results. And as Kim said, we are continuing to study this very closely because you're absolutely right. This is a very important issue. And we want to do our best to make sure that we're presenting that information in the best way possible. So definitely appreciate those concerns.
I have a quick question. I was, when you were talking about and showing the examples of the different toilets, I was wondering how expensive they are compared to, what we're used to.
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, these toilets, and they're not making a whole lot of them, and they have to ship them from Europe. So they're about in the $700 to $750 range for the toilet. There are dry systems, and there's a separate insert, which is what I have in my home, and we've been able to do an installation for about $1,500 to $2,000 for that kind of a toilet and tank system. But yeah, we're doing some installations right now, and I think we will have some pretty good numbers about what it has taken to do that. As we do more and more of them, it will go more quickly and more easily and cost less, just the whole process to get things in and to work with them. And part of the model, Sue, as you are asking that, is these will come with a service contract from Rich Earth Institute for the pump out. This is part of it. So Rich Earth would come along, on a regular basis. And they also, just for your interest, they have like a float valve and a monitor, an alarm system, so that you can't overflow, or it won't screw up. And like when it's full, Rich Earth gets an alarm that says Sue's tank is full, better go get it pumped out. So we've got all those kinds of bells and whistles to go with it that make it more and more viable.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
We're also, just on the subject of money, at the risk of stating the obvious, we talked a little bit about the large amounts of federal funding that will be flowing across the country, and looking to see the possibility of having some of that funding support this kind of work. So we have to date received a lot of grant funding, and we will continue to pursue that. So we do see some continued potential for some of these installations that we've been describing to have some of the costs offset, so that an individual or a business is not necessarily bearing the full brunt of those costs. That's going to end up being very sort of case specific in terms of what particular grants we're able to get and what projects we can include. But in terms of kind of expanding the introduction of this sort of technology, we also see that as an important wedge, if you will, of really demonstrating the efficacy of this technology and making the case to the public that this is really good stuff and it should have a much broader adoption.
I'm going to just throw this out, even though it's still very up in the air, but when we receive our second phase of funding from the National Science Foundation, we're also eligible to apply for $150,000 twice to do a major installation with the beta testing of this new technology. So when it gets to be about, maturity level of 8 or 9, we have to get it in a building and see how it all works. But the building designers are not going to have to pay for these first 2 or 3 that we do out in the world. Like, so for example, the Welcome Center or the Museum and Art Center, or, we have some other places around the country that are going to want to try them too. But it'd be great if we could get one at the local level that would be, processing the waste from 35 to 50 people a day on site. And, we would have some funding to throw towards a project like that. We have to get our architects excited.
Yes, and it would be great. It would be great if you had educational information at those sites too. And
absolutely.
could learn about it and share that.
Mm-hmm.
No question.
Yeah, and I think for me, even going a step further and thinking about the Hinsdale Island Bridge, I know there's been talks about what that shapes out, and is it a composting toilet, or, and I don't know if Rich Earth has been in the mix for people suggesting that, but I think that'd be an excellent opportunity there because it's so explicitly tied to the river and water.
Mm,
I've invoked you guys because it doesn't make any sense to run a sewer line, you know, across the bridge. Yeah, so y'all have been invoked. It's still at the kind of higher level design yet, but have no fear, you will continue to be invoked.
okay, Chris, please bring us in. You keep us informed because we're so, you know, we want to be there. We need to know when. Like, bring us in now. Okay, now. That'd be great.
Kevin, if I may ask, do you have a connection to the Hinsdale area? I don't quite know what your background is, but you're obviously very much up to speed on a lot of this stuff. So
I'm in Ryan's cohort for Eco AmeriCorps, and I'm
okay.
serving with the town, Stephen Dotson, within the sustainability.
Oh, okay, terrific.
Yay! Great program.
Yeah, and I'll hop in with another question. Thinking about in conversations with Steve Barrett and getting good response from the town for Rich Earth, and I was wondering if there's been a noticeable impact for like less water and stuff going to the treatment plant because of so many donors coming on board.
We are removing about 500 pounds of nitrogen a year, and that's both from sewage, from the centralized and septic systems. And when you think about that, that's about 1 day's worth of in a year. So it's not a very high percentage yet.
Yeah, I was thinking like volume wise, because people aren't flushing that many more times, kind of thing.
Right. We're looking to scale up, and for us that means easily an exponential scale of 10 scaling up, and then more to start to have the kind of impact that you're really talking about with your question. That is most definitely the goal. That's why we're doing this, to really make a big impact. So there's a lot of room to grow there. That's what we're trying to do. Great question, though.
Does anyone have anything else? One more thing, Brian?
Yes, I just wanted to sort of the general sort of like problem with the eutrophication is algal blooms. Has anybody tried to harness that at all by actively growing algae in urine at all, and actually having and then getting sort of the green algae for composting and removing nitrogen that way?
Great out of the box question. I love it. I don't particularly have a good response, but very interesting question.
Well, urine, I know spirulina groups when I was in India, and also I know in France they are growing spirulina with hydroponics, and they do use urine. And I know that when I was also working with an NSF program, there was a man who was inventing an algal bloom recovery system where he would harvest the algae out of the waters. I don't know where that's headed, that technology, but also there's the hydroponic approach to using the nitrogen from the urine in a very controlled setting, because you really have to measure it and make sure it's the exact right amount that the plants need. You can't, that's what the problem is. If you fly across the country, just next time, if that is a possibility and you're in an airplane, you look down and you notice the water bodies, you will be so, especially in a certain time of year when it's getting warm, and it's getting warmer and warmer. So they're growing faster and faster. The algal blooms, you can see them from the plane in lots of different lakes and ponds. And it's a really critical problem. So, and urine is so responsible for it, because it's 75% to 80% of what's in wastewater of the nitrogen comes from the urine. So I hope I answered your question, but yes, hydroponics and using using the nitrogen to grow things in water is a real thing, but that can't, it's got to be controlled.
Yes, I was thinking specifically about sort of, the algae, because the algal blooms. Is it? Do I understand correctly that in freshwater it tends to be overabundance of nitrogen that causes algal blooms, but in saltwater it's overabundance of phosphorus that
It's
causes
the other way
algal
around.
blooms?
It's the other way around. The phosphorus is the problem in freshwater, and then the nitrogen is the problem in the saltwater, and it comes down the Connecticut River into Long Island Sound towards the ocean. So when the waters get down towards the ocean and the brackish areas with the salt, the nitrogen causes the algal blooms there. So coastal zones, a lot of coastal zones just are dead zones, because especially where you have a lot of human activity in large metropolises, big cities that are on the edge of a, on the edge of a continent or right on the ocean, they have a lot of problems. So
Yes, would have thought there's definitely an opportunity for harvesting the algal blooms to get the phosphorus back onto the back onto the land. Because once it's left, as I understand it, through groundwater, there's no going back.
yeah, I
That's
understand that. Yeah, it's true. So
Yeah.
thank you all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing, Kevin?
Yeah, just while I'll bend your ear just to say, if you need any support trying to get like get the different porta potties and things at a gallery walk event for more education and stuff, I think the town will be super interested in that. And then you can also include a picture of how people donate their urine at the depot by bike. I think I sent Ryan my photo. So not only by car, but people are biking it over there too.
That's great. That's great. And you're not the only one. That's really exciting. Yeah.
Super.
What's nice about our project and our program is it's a small project. It's not real big, but people who are involved feel really empowered by it and feel really a lot of sense of gratification that they can do something positive for the environment, when often we feel very discouraged about the direction that things are going. And so it's nice that people have this opportunity, and it's hopefully it'll grow and continue to blossom. It's happening. So
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you both for coming and sharing this information. And for everyone else, we will be posting this recording on our website. So if you hear of anyone who missed it today, you can just direct them there.
thank you, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.